Rare Russian Ladoga armored vehicles spotted on the front line. So let's talk about something that really shouldn't exist on the battlefield in 2025. A Cold War dinosaur, dug out of the Kremlin's garage, patched together, and sent to Ukraine like it's still 1986. This week, footage emerged showing a rare Ladoga armored vehicle. Yes, Ladoga, the Soviet panic-mobile designed to whisk Politburo fat cats out of Moscow in case the nuke started falling. A vehicle meant for nuclear fallout zones is now rumbling around Ukrainian forests, being swatted out of existence by a drone that costs less than a used PlayStation 5 Pro. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran of the U.S. Army Infantry and the U.S. Air Force, and today we're playing Pimp My Ride with a Soviet-era nuclear fallout tank. Back in 1982, the Soviets decided they needed a specialized vehicle to keep their leadership alive if World War III turned nuclear. Enter the Ladoga, built on the chassis of a T-80 tank and powered by the GTD-1250 gas turbine engine. An engine famous for burning through fuel like a drunken sailor on payday. It churns out 1,250 horsepower, which sounds impressive, but it mostly just made the T-80 a logistical nightmare. What set the Ladoga apart wasn't its gun, because it didn't have one. Instead, it was sealed tighter than a Soviet vault, with special filters, neutron shielding, and compressed air dust-blowing systems so radioactive particles couldn't sneak in. The crew had their own life support system, complete with cylinders of clean air, so even if the filtration system failed, they could still breathe. In other words, it wasn't built for warfighting. It was built as an armored limousine for the Soviet leadership to escape Armageddon. Think of it as a radiation-proof Uber for Brezhnev's buddies. The Ladoga even made a famous appearance after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. The Soviets rolled one into the fallout zone, not to save lives, but to test how the Politburo's getaway car handled extreme radiation. Man, I would hate to be the driver that day. Because if you're going to risk equipment, why not use the machine literally designed for it? That was arguably the Ladoga's only real mission. After the fall of the Soviet Union, most of them vanished into obscurity. A handful, maybe 4 or 5, were ever built. One wound up in a museum. The others? Mothballed, stored, or forgotten. Until now. Here's the big question. Why on earth is one of these relics rolling around Ukraine today? Well, the answer is simple and deeply embarrassing for Moscow. Russia has burned through so many tanks and armored personnel carriers that it's now dipping into Cold War museum stock to keep its war machine moving. Since the full-scale invasion began in 2022, Russia has lost more than 3,000 tanks and armored vehicles, over 1,100 tanks in just the last year. Ukraine claims the number is double that, but either way, it's catastrophic attrition for any modern army. So now, instead of modern replacements, Russia's pulling junk out of storage. T-62s from the 1960s, MTLBs designed for towing artillery, pressed into service as troop carriers, and now a Ladoga. This isn't next-gen warfare, it's last-ditch scavenging. And let's not forget what the Ladoga was designed for. The inside isn't like your average Russian troop carrier. It's got padded leather seats, designed for the soft rear ends of pampered Soviet officials. There's no cramped bench seating, no rickety ride like a BTR. This was the Cadillac of Soviet armored engineering. So maybe some Russian colonel or general snagged it from storage to ride around in style. A special privilege, a way of saying my life is more valuable than yours. Or maybe it was loaned out to protect the son of some higher-up at the Kremlin who accidentally got sent to the front. Either way, the symbolism is clear. The comfort of the few trumps the survival of the many. That, if anything, might be the most authentically Russian thing about this entire story. But the Ladoga's Cold War designers never imagined FPV drones. Cheap, nimble, precision-guided nightmares that can slip through forest covers and hit weak spots with surgical accuracy. Reports suggest this Ladoga, like one that was spotted in March of 2024, was struck by Ukrainian FPV drones. Now, it's not clear whether this new sighting is a new Ladoga or the same one Ukraine targeted in 2024, but imagine the irony. A vehicle designed to withstand nuclear fallout defeated by a drone with an explosive charge the size of a can of Dr. Pepper. It's like putting a medieval knight in full, exquisite, handcrafted plate armor, putting him on the freeway, and watching him get obliterated by a Honda Civic. Now, the Kremlin keeps telling us it's replacing battlefield losses with shiny new tanks, but here's the reality. Russia's industry is sputtering. The Kurgan-Mashzavod plant in southern Russia produces about 400 BMP-3s a year. That's 33 a month, roughly one a day. And these aren't brand new, they're reconditioned from old stock. So while Russian officials brag about new production, what they're really doing is pulling decrepit units out of storage, rebuilding what they can, and sending them to the front with a fresh coat of paint. It's not innovative, it's recycling with better PR. Which brings us back to the Ladoga. Someone clearly thought, hey, this thing was built to survive nukes, maybe it'll do well against drones. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The presence of the Ladoga on a Ukrainian battlefield isn't really a funny anecdote about the Kremlin incompetence. Well, it is. It's a symbol of a deeper crisis. Russia is burning through its war-making capability faster than it can replace it. Each tank destroyed, each APC gutted, each rare Ladoga turned into Swiss cheese by Ukrainian drones. These losses represent decades of Soviet industrial output that can't just be replaced overnight. No matter what anybody tells you on Fox News or CNN, that Russia is ramping up its wartime economy for manufacturing. If the war ended tomorrow, Russia's armored forces would still be crippled for a decade or more. The country simply doesn't have the industrial capacity to rebuild at the pace it's losing equipment. Not when sanctions choke supply chains, not when the West is watching every microchip, and not when every refurbished T-62 that rolls off the line is obsolete before it even hits the field. So here we are, a vehicle designed for Soviet leaders in a nuclear apocalypse, pressed into service as a battlefield taxi in Ukraine, and blown apart by a $2,000 drone in 2024, and maybe back from the dead in 2025. That's not just irony, that's history eating itself, because, make no mistake, Russia is burning through the last vestiges of its Soviet inheritance. These are museum pieces, relics, and they're being sacrificed for a few kilometers of mud and rubble. If you want an American analogy, it would be like the U.S. Navy dragging a World War II Gato-class submarine, the USS Silversides, floating here in Lake Michigan, out of the museum, repainting it, and sending it out to the Atlantic. Sure, it technically floats, but it's one drone strike away from being a reef. That's what the Ladoga represents. Not strength, not resilience, desperation. Russia has already paid an enormous price in blood and steel for this war. Its tank reserves are gutted, its industrial capacity is strained, its generals are rolling dice with hardware older than most of the conscripts driving it, and yet the Kremlin persists, throwing everything, including rare museum-quality artifacts, into the Ukrainian meat grinder. This isn't a show of power, folks. It's a sign of weakness, and every time Ukraine destroys another one, the message is loud and clear. Russia's past can't save its future. That's it for today, friends. Subscribing is the best way to support my continued ramblings, and when you do, you help fight the AI slop and faceless bot channels that are flooding this platform right now. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.